Welcome to Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast with Eric Wolf and Ashi Vale, where we help you become a better industry professional by gaining inspiration from some of the world's most successful people in the food and beverage tourism industry. With each episode, we meet these leaders and examine their secrets of success. We reveal the obstacles and challenges they have faced, along with their solutions and triumphs, and give you ideas and inspirations for many of the same business issues that you may be facing as well. And now for today's episode. Welcome. I'm Eric Wolf, and I'll be your host today for episode 44 of Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast. And joining me today is co-host Ashi Vale. Today we'll be speaking with Roberta Muir, a cookbook author and freelance food and lifestyle writer who loves sharing her passion for cooking, eating, drinking, and traveling while promoting and connecting with great producers, products, and chefs. She holds a Master of Arts degree in gastronomy and is also a qualified sherry educator and cheese judge. Roberta also authored a Lombardian cookbook and a Sardinian cookbook with two prominent Sydney-based Italian chefs, but perhaps she is best known for managing Australia's largest recreational cooking school, the Sydney Seafood School at Sydney Fish Market from 1997 to 2021. A keen cook, enthusiastic diner, and adventurous traveler, Roberta shares her recipes and experiences through her own website and weekly newsletters. She lives in Sydney with her husband, photographer, spirits expert, and fellow food lover, Franz Scheurer. Welcome, Roberta.
Hi, Roberta. I have been reading your newsletters for years now, so it's a real thrill to get to speak with you.
Oh, thank you, Ashi.
Yeah, I get really excited when I see in my inbox your top 5 lists of everything from top 5 dessert cocktail recipes to the top 5 chicken and duck joints. So what inspired you to start these lists?
That's a good question. I was writing for a long time for various publications, for Gourmet Traveller, for Jetstar In-Flight magazine, various other publications. About 6-7 years ago, publishing in Australia, and I imagine globally, started to be taken much more in-house. Budgets were cut and they weren't paying freelancers anymore. So those jobs started to dry up and I didn't want to stop writing. So I started Food, Wine, Travel pretty much for selfish reasons because I enjoyed sitting down each weekend in my spare time and writing. And I thought, I'm not going to stop. So I created a website and a newsletter where I could keep writing and sharing what I love with other people.
Oh, that's wonderful. And then how do you come up with the lists?
They just come to me. I'm not really sure. It is the things that I enjoy. So I enjoy sherry. I enjoy cheese. I enjoy cooking a wide variety of food. I don't write about a lot of spirits. That's my husband's domain. I write more about wine because that's what I enjoy. I write about the restaurants we visit and when we travel, the places we visit. It's really very personal and it seems to resonate with people. And that's been the beauty of writing for myself rather than writing for an editor. There's no one saying, write more of this, write less of that. I write what I love and people seem to enjoy it.
Oh, well, it definitely shines through, and the freedom to be able to do that is truly, truly wonderful.
It is special. I appreciate how lucky I am to be able to do that.
And how did you meet your husband? It sounds delightful that you met someone who's just as passionate about food and travel as you.
My husband was the greatest gift that I received from Sydney Seafood School. I think I'd been there 6 weeks back in 1997, and he was a guest at a cooking class. And we met, we started talking, we became friends, and 2 years later I was living with him.
That's incredible. Tell us a little bit more about the Sydney Seafood School, Roberta.
Sydney Seafood School is an amazing institution. So it's 31 years old now, and it was built when Sydney Fish Market did a major refurbishment 31 years ago, just before the Olympics in Sydney, actually. And it's interesting because they're about to undertake another major redevelopment. And it was built to try and encourage Sydney-siders, Australians in general, but specifically Sydney-siders, I guess, to eat a wider variety of seafood. Back in the day, back in the 90s, Australian palates weren't as adventurous as they are now. We were multicultural, but we didn't have the incredible variety that we have of food in Australia. And the fishermen were going out, they were catching whatever swam into their nets, but the market, at least from the Anglo-Saxon population, was very narrow. So Sydney Fish Market, which was a government body at the time, it's now privatised, decided they wanted to educate people in cooking a wider variety of species. It's funny because now in 2021, that's the last thing we need, because people eat such a wide variety of food in Australia now. We moved away from talking about underutilized species and just moved more towards just inspiring people to eat well and to cook for themselves, for their family, for their friends.
Roberta, you were saying before the show that this was the first day of the rest of your career, and I can't imagine all of the emotions and thoughts that are going in your mind right now. I mean, you were the Sydney Seafood School for so long. You were the institution, and after such a successful and satisfying stretch, and now you're off doing your own thing. You're at home. You're obviously in nature. We hear the birds in the background, and that is a joyous thing to wake up to every morning. It just, I mean, can you try to explain all of the positive emotions that are rushing through you right now?
You said the birds are a joyous thing, and I guess that's where it starts. I feel very grateful and very blessed. I wake up to the birds every morning. We have kookaburras. I live on the North Shore of Sydney, so kookaburras, rainbow lorikeets are what you're hearing in the background, some magpies. And I've always been grateful, but I've always been throwing down a cup of tea and racing out the door. I don't like sitting in peak hour traffic, so I tended to leave home early. And I guess I didn't really get to enjoy them, and I'm going to now, more than ever. I'm going to sit down with my cup of tea, listen to the birds. I have no idea what I'm going to do next. I want to write. I want to keep connecting chefs, producers, home cooks. That seems to be a bit of a trilogy. You said that I was Sydney Seafood School, and so many people have said that to me, and I certainly defined myself through the school. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful 24 years, but I think it's good for the school now, good for my team. They've all had to step up with me leaving. And I think it's good for me that I get to think about what else I am beyond Sydney Seafood School. But I'm incredibly grateful for what I've built, for who I've worked with, for the opportunity, and for laying the foundation for what comes next.
Roberta, talking about your writing for a little bit, can you tell us, or do you have any advice for writing successful newsletters as you do, or the cookbooks that you've authored?
No, I was given one piece of advice that has always stayed with me when I first started writing, and it was from Margaret Alcock, who at the time was the food editor of Vogue Entertaining and Travel. And she'd been a writer her whole life, a long, distinguished career. And I asked her, what advice can you give a budding young writer, Margaret? And she said, kill your darlings. And I thought, what do you mean? She said, well, if there's a sentence or a paragraph or an expression that you're just so in love with, you think, aren't I clever? Isn't that a brilliant sentence? Chances are it doesn't mean anything to anyone else. You're too invested in it. So when you're editing, that's the first sentence you cut out. And when I'm editing my own work, I look at it and I go, kill your darlings. And I cross out those sentences that I'm so proud of. And it works.
Wow, that's some tough advice, but good advice sounds like.
Indeed.
Are you working on a book right now?
No, books are a little bit like the whole of publishing. Again, I don't know if it's an Australian thing, but I think it's perhaps global. Lantern, which was the cookbook arm of Penguin Random House in Australia, which published so many of our leading chefs, they cut things right back a couple of years ago. There's still a couple of publishing houses that do cookbooks, but fewer and fewer. I think there'll be another cookbook or two in the future, but it's not as easy as it used to be to get a publisher.
No, I imagine not. But you've clearly made your mark in the publishing world there, working with some of the prominent chefs there in Sydney. But I imagine there has to have been one or two things that were your prominent lessons learned from your either your time at the seafood school or your time writing these cookbooks. Could you offer any advice to people who are younger in their career, like maybe one or two tidbits that really stood out at top of your mind, things, advice really for the younger people just moving ahead in their careers?
Look, I think advice for everyone, young or old, one of the things that has settled more clearly as the years have gone by is that it's all about people. That might be a bit of a catchphrase, I don't know, but it's it's about connecting people. It's about working with people. It's about inspiring people. If you're not connecting with people, I don't know what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. Engaging with other people, finding out about them, learning what buttons to push, what makes them tick. Because if you're not interacting with other people, then you are your own audience. And that's not getting through life.
I guess it ties back with Kill Your Darlings. That's what Margaret was saying. You might be in love with that sentence, but chances are no one else is. So
Yeah.
even though I said to Ashi earlier, I'm quite self-indulgent in my writing, I write about what interests me. If that didn't resonate with other people, I'd be shouting into a vacuum. So you do always have to be connecting with people. And I think that came to me more through the last 12 months through COVID than ever before. And I did it with SSS at Home, which was our virtual cooking class at the seafood school. And I saw the best operators in Sydney in hospitality doing it. And that was, they really made sure that their audience, their guests, their customers knew that through a difficult time like COVID, those guests were not supporting a business, they were supporting individual human beings that ran that business and worked in that business.
Yeah.
And it's marketing, sure, but it's very genuine marketing because it was never truer than through COVID.
Yeah, sometimes we just have to step out of our own way. I think I've learned that from some people I've worked as well. Sometimes I am the biggest pit of mud, and until I can step out of my own pit of mud, we won't go forward.
No, and we only go forward together. I think COVID's taught us that. I think I was certainly inspired throughout COVID by the way the Sydney food community stepped up and supported restaurants, and by the way they stepped up and supported SSS at Home, which, as I said, was our virtual cooking classes, and felt that we were supporting them. I saw good stuff come out of COVID. I'm sure it brought out some bad things, and I know it certainly devastated some people and communities, but I saw the best in humanity shine through at a difficult time.
Roberta, tell us a little bit more about your pivot during COVID. It sounds like you started offering these virtual classes and kits pretty quickly after the pandemic hit. So what inspired that, and how did you get that going?
Well, what inspired it was people. Most of my staff are casuals, were casuals, and like a lot of Sydney's hospitality community, the 23rd of March is burnt onto our brains. We had a class on the weekend, on the Sunday. We had another class scheduled for the Monday, and I woke up Monday morning to the news that Sydney was going into lockdown, which wasn't surprising given what was happening in the rest of the world, but we can be a bit myopic sometimes in Australia, and I'm not even sure we saw it coming. So on the 23rd of March, 12 very good, talented people that were in my care lost their job and had no means of paying their rent that week. So we had to move fast. We sat down and we said, what can we do? And we did a list of a dozen or so things. And I don't remember what the other 11 were, but one of them was, let's video a class, pack up the ingredients. If the guests can't come to us, let's send the ingredients out to them with a video, with a printed recipe. It was very simple in hindsight. Do what we do, but take it to the people instead of them coming to us. And lo and behold, it worked. And at the peak of just after lockdown finished, actually, we sold 750 kits in 1 week. So normally we would have 40 to 60 people come to a hands-on cooking class. Instead, we could take that class to 750 people, which actually meant double that because our meal kits were for 2 people. So we fed 1,500 people that week.
Now, how did you have everything so organized that lockdown was announced and within a week you were already selling videos and doing deliveries? I find that tremendous that you were that organized and insightful.
Well, it was very much a team effort. So I led the team, but I have to say the team came up with the idea. It was their suggestion, and they say necessity is the mother of invention. When you're facing not being able to pay your rent, you get pretty clever. And we used what we had on hand. We had the amazing facility that was the seafood school, full of equipment, full of food. And we dived in. We had some recipes all ready to go because that's what we do. We teach people recipes. So we literally used our own staff. One of our staff members knew how to video, so she was the videographer. thankfully, we were blessed with several excellent presenters. So one of the girls jumped in and presented, and we just riffed on what we had and made it up as we went along. And each week we got smarter and better about it.
So it was kind of a perfect storm that you had the commercial kitchen, you had the food, you had the talent, you had the technology. So it was pretty easy for you to put it all together. Wow, what a blessing. That's a fantastic story.
So I guess the lesson there is do what you know and use what you've got. And that's what we did. We just came at it from a slightly different angle.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think some people tried to do different things, or they tried to pivot. But I think that it's just really going back and focusing on what you know best, what you do best, getting better at what you do. We were telling people that they should plan and improve for when travel resumes again. Take everything that you've been working on, improve it, and then plan for the relaunch. And a lot of people did do that. But unfortunately, some people were paralyzed by the fear of the crisis, and some people are not in business with us anymore. But I hope that they'll be replaced by some other creative people when things normalize again.
I think paralysis is a serious risk, and I'm grateful that didn't happen. It would have been easy just to fall into a depression. Again, it comes down to people. I didn't have time to be depressed. I'm kind of the mother hen, and I needed to look after my people. Everything else that came out of SSS at home was a bonus, but the inspiration was, how do I get some money into these people's bank accounts next week? What can we do? And I was lucky that I worked with a very we can do it team that made that happen. But certainly out of that came a business that Sydney Fish Market, Sydney Seafood School, will continue alongside the face-to-face classes, which they've now also resumed.
It sounds like connecting with people was something that was really meaningful to you from a long time ago. And I loved reading about the first time you entertained when you were 12, Roberta. Can you share that with our audience? I think it's a lovely little story.
It's the first time that I recall. Maybe I had tea parties as a little thing, but when I was 12 years old, my aunt sent me some money. My father's family are in Scotland, and we were very lucky. Every year our aunts would slip some currency into a card, and it would arrive in the mail, and we'd rush off to the bank and change it for Australian dollars. And I had this money in my hot little hand and what to do with it. And there was a new cafe that had just opened in our local shops, and it sold pies, very Australian thing, and chips, but they were very good pies. And I remember being impressed by them when I had one, and I thought, that's what I'll do with the money. I'll take my friends. So I rounded up half a dozen friends, and I took them out for pies and chips, and it felt good. It felt good sharing something that I had discovered and was impressed by with some other people. And I think that's what got me started on wanting to share my love of food with others.
Oh, I love it. And I'm sure people who are going out for pies and chips with you even now are enjoying it thoroughly.
Well, I am the person that my group of friends turns to and says, where shall we eat? And I say, what do you want to eat? What do you like? We don't care, Roberta, we trust you. So that's kind of the reputation, that I'm the one that will figure out what we should eat and where we should eat.
Speaking of which, what is your favorite food travel memory?
That is such a difficult question, and there have been so many incredible memories. I wonder how you select just one. But when I think about that, one thing comes to mind above all the others, and it was a simple night in Florence in a local trattoria. I was in Italy in 2013 with my sister and my niece. And again, it was exciting sharing a city that I fell in love with a long time ago with people who are very dear to me. And my niece, who was about 20 at the time, decided she was having a night off without the old people. She stayed at home in the hotel. And I took my sister to this restaurant called Buca di Mario, which is in a cellar in Florence. And it's good food. It's not Michelin starred. It's not amazing. It was good local food. But my sister and I talked and laughed and probably drank too much Chianti. And the service was that wonderful, charming, funny, cheeky Italian service. And to this day, we can make each other laugh just by mentioning half of a sentence that one of the waiters had said. and we both know what we mean, and we roll around on the floor laughing. And I think that's what food does. It brings people together and it forms memories. And out of all the meals I've had, all the dining experiences, when you ask me what's the most memorable, that's the one that comes to mind.
It's interesting that you brought up your sister in your food travel memory, because you're absolutely right. A lot of people, when we ask this question, they talk about a specific food dish, right? And it's the memory, though. It's the they say in marketing to involve all five of the human senses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you did that, and you created those positive memories with the food, but also with someone who meant something to you. And that's the best way to create those memories. And I have many memories like that as well. And we talk about in food tourism how it's unique and memorable food and drink experiences, and that memory is not necessarily just from the food. It can be very much from the people that you're eating with as well.
From the people that you're eating with, and also, as I said, the staff, the setting. I think food is very much, you can say to me, what's the best dish you've ever eaten? And that's a different question. But when you're talking about memory, hospitality, and especially when you're traveling, is about so much more than just the food on the plate.
Absolutely.
It's about the whole sensory experience. And that comes back to the people.
We do talk to a lot of restaurants and hoteliers, and some of them don't seem to understand hospitality. They seem to be obsessed with the food, right? Or, the temperature, or why do you want salt on this dish, or whatever it is. And, your story about the Italian waiters, I know those stories. I know those waiters, or, Italian or French or whatever, put yourself in any country here. I know those stories when the waiters come over and interact with you, and they really make a chance to make that long lasting impression on you. And it's really, it's a fantastic memory. It really is. Gosh, you're bringing back so many memories from my own life.
Good. The best chefs I know, and I've been very, very blessed at the seafood school to become friends with many of Australia's top chefs. And the smartest operators know that whatever they do in the kitchen, front of house can make or break the diner's experience. And they know that they're talented chefs, but they know that if they don't have the right team out on the floor, the right restaurant manager, the right wait staff, it can go horribly wrong. And they know that it's the people that engage with the guests that at the end of the day define the experience those guests have.
It's a performance, and they're serving a memory, not a meal.
Exactly.
Roberta, you mentioned earlier to us that your staff would probably say you have a quote. What would that quote be?
Well, I have a few. One is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And another one is don't leave your personal life at the door. Now, again, it's about people. A lot of businesses, a lot of companies say, leave your personal life at the door. You're at work now. And I always used to say to my staff, don't leave your personal life at the door. You're a whole person. It's crazy to ask you to come in here and forget about the fight you just had with your husband, or what your child did that annoyed you, or the neighbor that annoyed you. Come in, have a cup of coffee, tell us what's going on in your world. And that way, we're not going to think you're cross with us, the other people in the office. If you're a bit off your game, we know why. And we can then all get on with our day.
Roberta, that is such an empathetic way to manage people. I think that is truly wonderful. It does seem so awkward when, at least this was the traditional way of working, when you expect to just sort of leave everything behind when you get to work. But how is that possible? We are humans after all. I think that is fabulous.
It's empathic, but it's also it's actually also smart, because as humans, we always think it's about us. So if you and I share an office space, Ashi, and you come to work and you've just had a fight with your husband, but you don't tell me that, and you're a little titchy, a little quiet maybe, I think, oh, Ashi's cross with me today. She's not talking to me. It's got nothing to do with me. But as a human, of course, I think it's about me. Whereas if you say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not quite myself today, Bob and I had an awful fight this morning, then I go, it's not about me. Let me make you a cup of tea. You probably feel better for sharing, and I feel a whole lot better because I know it's not about me.
Yeah, it's so true.
Smart.
People are thinking about you. Yeah, it's kind, it's smart, it's empathetic, and it's so true that people are not, most of the time, people are not thinking about you.
But we always think they are. We always think it's about us.
Roberta, I'd like to switch gears here for a minute. When we were talking, you were mentioning your favorite book, and I am fascinated that your favorite book right now is from an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. Help me understand why this book is so mesmerizing for you.
Okay, so it's Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. Now, you thought I was going to say a food book, didn't you? And yes, that's interesting that I didn't choose a food book. I have had to commute to and from work for the last 24 years. And as I said earlier, I don't like peak hour traffic. So the way I avoid road rage is I've listened to a lot of books. I'm a big fan of Audible. I download the books. I listen to podcasts as well. And I drive to and from work. Sometimes I listen to language tapes, and I've educated myself or extended my education in the commute. And one of those books that I picked up recently was Never Split the Difference. And he said something quite amazing. You know, often when people are negotiating, they think that splitting the difference is a good idea. You get half, I get half, you know, we've all got a little bit of something. And he said, as a hostage negotiator, you can't say to the kidnappers, oh, you've got two hostages, give me one, you kill the other one. It doesn't work that way. You can't afford to split the difference when you're negotiating for human life. And I don't even know what it was about his presentation, but I highly recommend that book to anyone who ever has to negotiate with anyone. And at the end of the day, that's all of us, isn't it? Whether we're negotiating with the kids or the staff or the boss, we all end up in negotiations at some time or other. And I think I learned more from that book than from any other book I've ever read or listened to.
You know, it's interesting. You call it that we're in negotiation with other people all the time, but I always say to my team that we're all in sales, and it's, you know, two sides of the same coin, really. Regardless of what you're selling, you may not be selling a product, but you're selling yourself, your idea, your experience, your charisma, whatever it is, you know, or you're negotiating. You're doing exactly the same kind of thing, but from a slightly different angle. So, yeah,
You're right.
It's that connecting with people and really learning how to connect with people in a way that they can then respond to you in the way that you want them to.
And as a hostage negotiator, of course, that's what Voss had to do. He had to go into incredibly tense situations. And one of the things I love about the book is he gives really clear examples from his own career. And his job was obviously to connect with the kidnappers, and whether, yeah, he was selling, he was negotiating, he was connecting. At the end of the day, it still came down to one human making a connection with another human.
So, Roberta, as you think about the future, what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
Well, I think we're still on the subject of people. So someone suggested to me, my boss actually, that I needed a memento. I needed something to take away as a gift from Sydney Seafood School after all these years to remember my time there. And what I actually took away from, as well as some lovely gifts, some lovely tangible things, what I took away was last week when I packed up, I took several cards off my corkboard in my office, and I looked at them this weekend, and they were cards from young people who've worked with me over the years, who were then moving on to their next big thing. And they were kind enough to give me a card to say, thank you. It's been amazing working with your team. This is what I've learned. This has been a great start to my career, et cetera, et cetera. And I've kept those cards, some of them for 20 years, because I think one of the most important things we can do is inspire other people, and especially young people who are starting out in their career. So I hope my legacy is, in fact, I know my legacy is, because I still talk to some of those people. My legacy is having inspired them, having given them a good start in the working world, having brought them into an incredible team and nurtured and supported them, and knowing that because of that, they will go out and do the same thing for the young ones that come under them. So it becomes a benevolent spiral, a benevolent circle, if you like, of giving, nurturing, inspiring, and so it goes on.
You're very right, Roberta. We have a pretty robust internship program here at the association, and really what inspired that was our belief in training younger people. You know, they are the next generation. They're going to carry this forward. They need the experience, they need the guidance, they need the inspiration, as you just said. And we feel exactly like you did. And it's one of the most satisfying things when you finish working with an intern and you taught them how to go from no skills whatsoever to being able to edit and produce a beautiful marketing video, or to explain to them an idea for a new kind of report, and to go from a completely blank template to an amazing, beautifully produced report. And this is something that they had never, it never even occurred to them how to do this. And you've given them that legacy. And it's so satisfying to see that sparkle in their eyes, even through Zoom today. But no one's ever given us any cards, but that must be in a very special place in your home right now.
It is indeed. And I'm grateful for the gifts that I received when I was leaving, but those cards in some ways mean more to me than anything.
Well, Roberta, as we start to wrap up for the day, I would like to ask you, we haven't really talked about your plans for the future, and I know that you're quite excited to be working on this next chapter of your life. So what are you planning for your Food, Wine, Travel brand, and what can we expect to see from you in the next couple of years?
I don't have a firm answer on that yet, Eric, because as we said, today is actually the first day of my new career. Some people have jobs, some people have careers, some people have vocations. Sydney Seafood School was my vocation. I lived it, I breathed it, I defined myself by it. And when I started to think that maybe I could step away from it, that was a crazy idea for me at first. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, yeah, it's time. What we did through COVID, what my team and I did, was extraordinary. I guess it inspired me to think, what else can I do? And I realized that I can't think about what the next thing is until I step away from the seafood school. So when I first said to a few close friends, I'm thinking of resigning, they all said to me, business people, you can't leave a job until you've got another job to go to. And I said, that won't work. I cannot begin to conceptualize what it is I might do until I let go of this. So over the last 5-6 weeks after I gave notice, lots of ideas have started to swirl around me. Lots of people have come to me with suggestions. And what I've realized is that 3 things will come together. Chefs and restaurateurs. I'm very connected to Sydney's hospitality community. Producers, great artisanal producers and some fabulous imported products, and the general public. I want to inspire home cooks, and I want to support our chefs, support our producers, introduce home cooks to the lessons from these chefs and the products from these producers. Even as I'm saying it now, it's getting clearer in my mind how these 3 elements are going to come together. And the Food, Wine, Travel brand is a great brand to do it under. It will tie in fabulous wineries here and abroad. It will tie in the things that I've learned from my travels and will learn from future travels. I think the pandemic has given people a lot of opportunities. As I said, of course, there's been a lot of negative things as well, and the human loss we need to acknowledge, but it's also forced us to step outside our comfort zone and try new things and look at old things from a different angle, as we did with SSS at home. So I think that as we move into this year and next year and things start to return to normal, whatever that looks like, many people will find that they can do more than they ever thought possible.
Roberta, I am so excited for what you're going to do next. We are both so appreciative of your passion for food and people, for your insights and your sense of awareness, and for this wonderful chat. Eric and I are so grateful for you.
And I'm so grateful to you. It's been a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Roberta, it was a delight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Ashi.
Thanks for listening today. The Eat Well, Travel Better podcast is brought to you by the World Food Travel Association. the world's leading authority on food and beverage tourism. Our mission is to preserve and promote culinary cultures through hospitality and travel. By doing so, we empower local communities and entrepreneurs with the knowledge and tools needed to reach new food lovers and gain a competitive edge. Founded in 2003, now each year we shepherd a community of 200,000 professionals in more than 100 countries. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And you can learn more about us, subscribe to our newsletter, and join our family at worldfoodtravel.org. Until next time, eat well and travel better.